to Blast of Strangeness podcast. So, as you read by the title, you are correct. Meta horror that terrified us back then breaks the fourth wall that really did terrify us back then. So, that was actually what I have been covering. Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994, which was 1990's meta horror that really terrified us then, or really did terrify us then. That's what meta horror did. Oop. Yes, I'm also wearing an Area 51 badge. See that? Yeah, I bet a lot of you didn't think I was going to wear that, did you? Well, guess what? I did. So, now, also, welcome to the channel if you're new. Also, if you've been subscribed for a while, welcome back. So, like I said, that really terrified us back then. Now, what I'm going to cover there, and hey guys, Chris here, and I'm back with Blast of Strangeness podcast, episode, 28 or 29? Oh well, who cares? Anyway, so this is the last night that I'm going to cover this on here, because next week something new will start on here to cover for a couple of episodes, for a couple of episodes. All right. So, in the 1990s, meta horror that actually breaks the fourth wall is supposed to terrify us, which it actually did. What I want to cover is the scene in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, to where Heather is, after she brings her son to the hospital, and when she's actually leaving for the first time she's leaving, she literally almost hits another car while she's backing out of the parking lot to leave. Welcome to the podcast. And yes, this podcast is being recorded live in real time. And I just want to briefly interrupt for 1 second. I also hear that there's also another Nightmare on Elm Street movie in the works. But apparently, I guess there's two different ones in the works. One deal was with Paramount Pictures, and the other one, I guess, is with Warner Brothers. And I also guess there's also a new Leprechaun movie that's supposed to be in the works. I just didn't know if anyone knew that. And I also want to thank the sponsor of today's video, vidIQ. Also, now that being said, so we're going to get right back to it. So, in Wes Craven's New Nightmare in 1994, I forgot to cover this last week, and before I get back to that now, this podcast was supposed to air last night. I was supposed to be on here, but there was a really bad power outage, so I couldn't be on here because that means no internet. Anyway, well, I'm back tonight, so that's that, it is what it is. So anyway, what had happened in what I was just talking about. So she's backing out of the hospital parking lot, almost hits another car. And then it was just interesting how that scene was actually filmed. And now I don't know if that scene was actually filmed in a studio on a sound stage or if it was really filmed on the street. That I don't know. I'm still trying to find that out. Now, something I also want to bring up, I still do not have the answer to this yet. I want to know if the Tarzana house in California, where the majority of the movie takes place, in the filming location, if that real house actually has a pool in the backyard or not. That's either a yes or a no. I mean, it did in the movie. That I know for a fact. But I don't know if the real house in real life actually has a pool or not. I haven't been able to get close enough to figure that out yet. But anyway, with that being said, something else I wanted to reference too is there's a lot of familiar faces in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Also, and I also have other episodes on this. You can also watch those too. And thank you for actually clicking on this and taking the time to watch this and deal with me and hear my mouth running. So, anywho, like I was saying, there is 2 different brand new Nightmare on Elm Street movies by 2 different studios that's supposed to be in the works. And I also know that there is another Leprechaun movie that's also supposed to be in the works, and I don't know what studio is doing that yet. And horror fans, if you love horror, then this podcast is for you. So, I'm still trying to figure this out. If the house in Tarzana, California, where Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where parts of it were filmed, if the house has a real pool in the backyard for real or not, like it did in the movie. I'm just trying to figure that out. So, anyway, now with that being said, there was also another scene in the movie which I found very interesting, where for a split second, no one really noticed this, but one of the hell scenes that were filmed in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, one of the flames actually rose a little higher than the others. Because there was a camera equipment issue that happened twice on set. During filming and production, the same issue happened twice. The camera's motor gears actually froze during that scene, and what the monitor did during the recording, it actually played part of the scene backwards, and instead of reshooting the movie or refilming, they just kept it in there and just kept rolling the cameras, which I thought was a great idea. Now, that's something I probably would have done as well. Now, also what I want to cover is the one scene where after the babysitter dies, when Dylan leaves the hospital and they don't quite realize he's gone at first, I just do not know how he left without, I don't know how he ended up leaving the hospital without being seen. And no one's seen him leave. I thought that was actually a great scene. But I'm just trying to figure out how he could actually leave like that and not be seen. I mean, I know it was a movie, but where it's supposed to look like real life. But how can you leave a scene, how can you leave like that and not even be seen? That's what I would love to know. I also just figured I'd talk about that briefly real quick from the movie besides. So, like I said, this podcast talks about all kinds of different things. So, like I said, each season of the podcast, the topics will change. Yes. Also, if you're new, be sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified every time for new videos. Also, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Also, you can email the podcast. The email address is somewhere there. Email that podcast email address if you have any questions or a comment, or if you want to be on the podcast. And you can actually do that, and I will look at it, read it, right on here live. And yes, this podcast is being recorded in real time. Oh, which also reminds me, if you're a YouTube content creator, listen up. Listen to me carefully. What I am about to tell you is something that's very important, and I'm going to show you proof. So there's this advertisement thingy on Facebook called Digital Boom Company. So what they do is they try to claim that, we can, if you're a small YouTube channel, we can help you get this, that, and the other for only a couple bucks, like $5 or under, or a little more, or whatever. Well, I hate to tell you this, but that is actually a scam. Yes, it is. Because if that was the case, those things are not going to ask you for money that fast. And it is a scam, and I will prove it to you. Just give me a minute to find it. All right, I know it's here. I have it. Hold on. Just, I'm looking for it. Don't worry. Where'd you go? Yeah, you can look the company up on Facebook. I'm telling you, it's actually a scam. Well, anyway, I actually was able to figure that out. You know, I don't even remember how I figured it out, actually. But anyway, that's not important. So if you do see an ad on Facebook, if you are a YouTube content creator, do not click on that. Because it's a bunch of hooey. That's for sure. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do you know that? Trust me. You'll be surprised how I know that. But like I said, you would honestly be surprised that the digital boom company that claims to help content creators, do not click on that right now, because let me tell you something. It's actually a scam. Just to let you know. And I figured I would mention that and bring it up. Well, I wasn't going to, but I just feel that I should share it with you to bring it up. And so like I said, if you're a content creator, do not click the digital boom company thing on Facebook, because I'm just telling you right now that it's actually a scam. All they do is just want your money. That's for sure. So now, that being said, also, I'm trying to figure this out still. Something about how are all these movie studios making all these movies suddenly? Interesting, right? Right. So, which a lot of you probably, hold on one second. Damn it. Come on. Oh, there you go. Okay. Back from that little problem. So, now, like I was saying, last night the problem was the podcast ran into a power outage issue. So that means no power, no internet, no podcast episode. Which brings me to my next point, something I'm also irritated about. That whole ordeal from last night. But that's something for a whole nother episode, but let's not get into that right now. So anyway, now, also in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I also liked how there were lots of familiar faces and some new ones. I also like how majority of it also referenced the Nightmare on Elm Street other films, within this series. Now, I thought that was pretty cool. And also, yes, I am going to be back again next week with another episode on that. But that's a surprise. So anyway, so like I said, if anyone wants to email the podcast, feel free, and I'll read your email on here right now. So how is everyone tonight? Now, like I said, the schedule for this podcast, it goes live Saturday nights, and then is usually scheduled for Monday nights. But also, once again, if you're a YouTube content creator, listen to me carefully. If you see an ad on Facebook called the Digital Boom Company, do not click on it, because I can tell you right now that it's a scam. All they do is just want your money. I saw a whole big thing about that earlier today on Facebook. And so I figured I'd share it on here. So now, I also liked in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how majority of the scenes were filmed at night. Some scenes were filmed in the house. Other scenes were filmed on a soundstage at the studios. I also like how it actually shows New Line Cinema in one of the scenes in the movie. It's just a very split second. You only see it for a couple seconds. Very quick, so fast, you can hardly barely notice it. Now, I like how they did that. I also liked how it's a horror movie within a horror movie, where the actors and actresses in the movie are playing themselves. Also, that I thought was pretty cool. I also liked in Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994 how the earthquake scenes were all actually filmed, which something a lot of you also still do not know this. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. So I'll tell you. So in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, while the earthquake scenes were actually being filmed for the movie, there was an actual real earthquake that actually took place. One of them scenes made it into the movie while they were filming an earthquake scene. Now, a lot of you don't know that. I do. And I also liked how in Heather's dream sequence, you hear the director, Wes Craven, yell, "Cut the effects," due to all the chaos that's taking place in the dream world. That I thought was pretty cool besides. So, now, hold on. Anyway. Now, is there anything I missed from last week? No. Good. I didn't think so either. That's for sure. So, where'd it go? All right, well, I can't find that right now. I didn't even bother. So, now, if you ever see me out in public, say hi. It's okay. No, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So, now, this channel loves horror, like me. Now, also, now, this podcast is filmed in a disclosed location, which is not to be shared with anybody. That's due to a lot of reasons. So, it's a one-man show, which we all know by now. Also, I have plenty of content on my YouTube channel you can watch. Feel free. Now, I also made a short, independent, low-budget horror film that's on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. It's actually called The Black Shadow Stallion. You can watch that. I made it. So feel free to give that a watch if you'd like. You can. Just be sure to watch all my content. And also, this channel something I've noticed. Some of the comments were quite interesting. And yes, thank you for your time and feedback with those comments, whether they were rude or nasty. But that's besides the point. So, I also liked in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how it was different from the other movies, where things were so different in a different location, just a lot of familiar atmosphere, which I loved, by the way, in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, does anybody know what in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, towards the end, there was a note in the movie script actually written to Heather from Wes Craven. Something about playing her character Nancy one last time. Now, does anyone know anything about that? What that note specifically actually had said? If so, email it into the podcast. So this podcast is going to be very, very interesting this season. I also liked in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how Jessica Craven actually makes an appearance in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I know what you're thinking. Who's that? It's Wes Craven's daughter, if you weren't sure. I like how she plays one of the nurses in the movie. I also liked how the main hospital nurse or doctor or whatever she was, Heather suddenly has a dream where 1 minute she's the nurse lady / doctor, and then, next thing she turns into Freddy. That I thought was interesting too, by the way. So, and I know I have mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. I also liked how Heather said one of her famous lines from A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. That scene also where she's in the hallway running in the school, where she's literally running away, and she's stopped by the hall monitor lady. What she said in A Nightmare on Elm Street, she actually says it again in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. If you know, you know. So, it's just interesting how that same line was used in both films, by the way. Anyway. Out. Sorry, there's a mosquito or something in here. Damn it. Not during filming. What's wrong with you? Anyway, sorry about the distraction. So, like I said, horror fans, watch my podcast. You're going to love it. So, now, I was thinking about making a low-budget horror film to where basically an updated version of Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994, except for a few things. I would change a few things only specifically. Obviously, I would have Dylan come back as an adult, but I would have him come back with his partner. And I would also change the talk show scene. Instead of it taking place at that specific talk show, I would actually have it be the Steve Wilkos talk show instead. Now, I would also change a few things, such as, for example, I would also have some different cast and crew besides play the different roles of different people to go from there. That's, like I said, there are some things that I would change. So now, a while back, I was thinking about it. I have a whole thing about it written on my phone, but I didn't make it because a few reasons. One, I'm going to need people to actually be in it first, and then see where it goes from there. But I really haven't had any luck with that. So if anyone is interested in that, just email the podcast for the details. If you're looking for a payday for it, unfortunately, I will not be able to help you with that. I am so sorry. But, like I said, just email the podcast and I'll read your email right on here. And we will go from there. I just can't believe that there's a bunch of movies that are in the works by different studios. 2 are actually the same title and the same name by 2 different studios, which is also very interesting, by the way. Like I said, just please feel free to email the podcast. Comments, questions, anything to that nature for the podcast will work. And I will read them right on here. No questions asked. But no one emails in, so I don't think that's working yet. Also, if you're interested, you can just please feel free to email into the podcast. The email is there somewhere. You just have to know where to look for it. Anyway. Also, like I said, I gotta just mention this briefly one last time. YouTube content creators, this is for you. If you see an ad on Facebook by a group called Digital Boom Company, do not click on that because it is a scam. So I'm saving you from getting scammed, which I did not get scammed personally, but I figured out that it was a scam by the looks of things. So that's how I know all about that. And so I also liked in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how it was literally ahead of its time. Unlike most 90s meta horror films, that movie was literally like 10 years ahead of its time frame. Isn't that hard to believe? I know, right? Like, I thought the same thing at first. I even liked the movie's running time. I also like the scene the one scene in particular, to where Dylan's standing up on that thing there. And then almost falls, or literally falls off that thing. Yeah, that was interesting, if you ask me. I also like how John Saxon made an appearance in this film besides. I also like how the English teacher from A Nightmare on Elm Street also makes an appearance as one of the nurses in New Nightmare. That I thought was pretty cool. And yeah, even what's her name there? Her friend there, the girl Nancy was friends with, her boyfriend, the guy that she was going out with at the time, also makes an appearance in New Nightmare in one of the funeral scenes. I also liked how there was an earthquake during the funeral scene to be filmed. That I thought was completely interesting. Actually, the whole concept for the film was very interesting. I thought it was. So, I also know that some people liked the movie and some people didn't. Now, me personally, I thought that was an amazing movie. I didn't see nothing wrong with that film at all. But then again, meta horror in the 1990s, that's what they did. They broke the fourth wall. They broke the fourth wall in horror films because that's what 90s meta horror did. And I say I'm pretty sure I've had the VHS copy of a Nightmare or New Nightmare. I also had a DVD copy. Pretty sure I also have a Blu-ray copy laying around here someplace. Pretty sure I have it on all different formats. That movie. Now, I also liked how it was more dark, more scary compared to the other films. Yes, I mean, the other films were amazing, but give or take, this one I thought was the scariest out of all of them. That terrified us the most. And at the time, I was maybe, like 10 years old when I had watched it? Or maybe even younger. But when I had watched it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. But then I remember prior to that, when I was really, really young, I remember watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Although, I'm pretty sure that I've watched all the Nightmare on Elm Street movie Freddy Krueger series. I also did watch Freddy vs. Jason, too. Yeah, that one. But that was around the time when that one was coming out into the theaters. Seen it, and then pretty sure I had a copy. But by then the whole thing was on DVD. All the other films. So now, also again in the 90s, there was another meta horror film that kind of broke the fourth wall. 2 years later, Wes Craven did the same thing with the movie Scream in 1996. I know, ain't that hard to believe? I also did recently see Scream 7, and I thought it was okay. Yes, I mean, I know it was completely directed and written by someone else, unlike the other previous films, which I still thought was cool. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not the other films and all, but hey, that's okay. I also seen that the new Scary Movie 6 has a New Nightmare reference in it, which a lot of you do not know about, by the way. Yeah, a lot of you don't know that. You also don't know what the reference is and what it's referring to, of what scene it's actually mimicking within that movie. If you know where that original movie scene was filmed in the 90s, then you'll know a similar scene is in Scary Movie 6 that references that same scene from the 1990s. Well, yeah, obviously it's two different people, but if you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. It's okay. There is absolutely no judgment on this channel whatsoever. No judgment at all on this channel. None whatsoever. So, what I'm thinking here, just next week is me very, very interesting. So, I know what you're thinking, well, what's all that behind you? That's just the studio. That's all that is. But that's not really important. That's just what you'll be seeing in a lot of the content, for lots of reasons. Just because, yes, you see a whistle on there, you're correct. That's so when I'm in the grocery store, out in public, if the person I'm there with cannot find me in the store, they just have to listen for my whistle. in order to find me in the store. That's why there's a whistle there. And yes, I also have my Stuart's Shop's iced coffee, besides the French vanilla flavor. I also do like the pumpkin spice flavor, besides. Anyway, yes, this video is actually sponsored this time by vidIQ, who I also wanted to thank for today's sponsor of this particular video. Anyway, so like I said, you can go on there, you can use their service if you choose to. You can, you don't have to necessarily. For if you're a content creator, you'll understand. So now you can actually also start a podcast for very dirt cheap. Believe it or not. I'm not going to get into that right now. It's just not necessary, but that's been covered already. So now, so do you think the house in Tarzana, California has a pool or not? That would require a yes or a no. So now, when I find that out for real, whether or not if it does or if it doesn't, I will let you know on the live as soon as I find out. Count on it. I stand by my word. Just to let you all know. It's also a blessing to have you on the channel. And also, so I know exactly probably what you're thinking or wondering. Why did you choose to cover that of all things? Well, because I'm a horror fan like majority of you. That's why I chose to cover that. But yes. Now, I know you're probably also thinking, well, why do you have an Area 51 badge? Why are you wearing it? Well, let me just tell you, I actually got this sent in by a subscriber / fan. I can't remember who, but if you could just drop a comment with your name, I'll thank you. They also sent this with it. Besides, which I thought was really cool. I added the whistle though. Oh, the pins that I got right here. That's just from the local coffee shop in the area where I get my iced coffee from. Because I had gave them a compliment twice. That's why there's 2 pins on there for that particular location. So now back to where I was. So I also like in Wes Craven's New Nightmare how Freddy actually lifted Dylan into the air at one point. That was actually filmed with a crane. A crane was used during filming just for that specific scene. I also like how Heather ends up in the traffic and literally dodges an oncoming big truck. That I thought was very interesting. Literally, I thought for sure that truck was literally going to hit her. Like, just the whole impact of that scene, all that chaos, the way it unfolded. I literally thought for sure. But I was like, oh, okay, cool. You managed to dodge that. How on earth did you just manage that? To get literally right past it like nothing had happened. I think it's because she kind of hit under it in a certain way. So it didn't actually hit her. I'm pretty sure that's how she literally survived. I'm pretty sure. But like I said, though, I thought Wes Craven's New Nightmare in 1994 was amazing. Also, I hate to do this, but it looks like we are out of time. I'm going to wrap this up, and much love to all of you. Thank you so much. God bless you. No judgment on this channel. Remember, whatever you're going through, it's okay. No judgment. I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.